It was a photo finish at the box office for car racing supremacy between Brad Pitt and Ricky Bobby. But after the weekend's checkered flag fell, F1 the movie lost to Talladega Nights by a nose hair. So Ricky Bobby hangs on to the title of highest grossing opening weekend ever for a live-action auto sports movie. Of course, there's been 19 years of ticket price inflation, so in terms of attendance, Ricky Bobby also shakes and bakes Brad Pitt all day long. Welcome to Box Office Revival, catching up on the past week at the box office as Jurassic World Rebirth descends upon us. Pitched as Top Gun Maverick on wheels, featuring the visceral thrill of race cars instead of fighter jets, F1 raked in $47 million for the actual weekend ending June 29th, 2025. Now, you may have seen other reports say $57 million, but that is incorrect. 57 was the total gross through Sunday, but not the gross for the weekend proper. That extra $10 million came from previews prior to the weekend. But domestic weekend charts and any corresponding records, by definition, are based on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday measurement. In other words, preview grosses do not go in the weekend column, but they are counted towards the total gross. But I digress. Back to F1. So why was the Hollywood narrative so overwhelmingly positive for an opening weekend gross that would be deemed disappointing or at best just okay for just about any other mega-budget summer blockbuster wannabe? Well, first off, it's the typical shill media regurgitating the press releases they received from the studios. Secondly, though, there is a belief that F1 will leg out beyond the norm due to the type of movie it is, and fueled further by its high audience scores, including an A on CinemaScore and 97 audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. But aside from all that, F1 did hit near the top of the range for car racing pictures, although that is a subgenre not known for huge box office. I mean, look at these opening weekends. You got Ford v Ferrari. That was a previous subgenre highlight at $29 million. But then there's Speed Racer. Yes, this subgenre is so anemic that a notorious box office flop can rank fourth. And Rush flamed out while Ferrari, without Ford, crashed at the box office, not even ranking on this chart. And in just one weekend, F1 beat the lifetime gross of Gran Turismo. And by the way, I must emphasize that this is a live-action only chart. If animation is counted, then Pixar's Cars movies would be the top 3. Now, movies that merely feature car racing in them, such as The Fast and the Furious, can floor it at the box office. It's just that when car racing is the central focus, that audiences seem to tune out. Hell, sports dramas in general aren't known for blockbuster opening weekends. Creed 3 holds the sports drama opening record, not adjusted for ticket price inflation, at $53 million. F1 actually slots in second here as well, because Talladega Nights is not a drama. In general, with sports dramas and car racing pictures, there's an initial hesitation to see them by most moviegoers. Sure, some folks are dialed into the genre, but the vast majority are not. We begrudgingly watch them eventually, but are often pleasantly surprised when we finally do see them. For instance, I had no interest in Gran Turismo, so I missed it in theaters. But I caught up with it later on Netflix and was surprised at how good it was. But that's the hurdle that this type of movie faces, which helps explain why F1's debut tracks as more impressive than another picture making the same amount. And it can't be coincidence that F1 the movie opened on the same weekend that Days of Thunder did in 1990. That's right, Cole Trickle just turned 35. Days of Thunder was meant to be Top Gun on wheels. Same star, Tom Cruise, same director, Tony Scott, same producer, Jerry Bruckheimer. But ultimately, that Top Gun lightning did not strike twice. Days of Thunder was seen as a disappointment, even though a lot of people went to see it. It made $82.7 million, ranking as the 13th biggest picture of 1990. If you adjust for ticket price inflation, that's like over $225 million today. Now, Bruckheimer is back 35 years later with F1, again trying to recapture the magic, with Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski and composer Hans Zimmer, who also did Days of Thunder. But Days of Thunder saw a 54% drop-off from that first Top Gun, whereas F1 is currently running 59% behind Top Gun Maverick. F1's attendance attendance may be even lower than Days of Thunder's at the same point, yet F1 is being spun as a success, whereas Days of Thunder was not. How times have changed. For Brad Pitt, F1 scored his third highest grossing opening weekend ever, behind World War Z and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. Here are Pitt's top 12 openers, not counting animation or bit parts. If we do account for ticket price inflation, though, then F1 would drop to number 9. For what it's worth, F1 also marks Apple's biggest launch yet, which is not saying much, considering their previous high was Killers of the Flower Moon at 20.7 million. The studio even retreated from theatrical after the embarrassing box office performances of Argyle and Fly Me to the Moon, literally yanking another Brad Pitt vehicle called Wolves from a planned theatrical release and sending it straight to streaming on Apple TV+. Alas, the public nature of box office may have been too intense for the image-conscious company. 'Tis better to have projects flop in obscurity on Apple TV Plus than to be laid bare for all to see under the scrutiny of the box office. Regardless of the financial prospects of F1, given its prodigious $200 million plus production cost, Apple has finally achieved the perception of success by launching a car racing sports drama to number 1 in the heat of the summer movie season. Optics, baby. But back to Talladega Nights. At $83.5 million through its 7th day, F1 did overtake Ricky Bobby on the weekdays. Talladega had $68.2 million through the same point. But, adjusted for ticket price inflation, that's the equivalent of $118 million or more today. Ultimately, Talladega ran out of gas at $148.2 million, or the equivalent of over $256 million today. So that's the number F1 needs to hit by the end of its run to truly topple Talladega. Domestically, that is. Full disclosure, F1 has already trounced Talladega internationally, but that number will be covered in the worldwide box office report. By the way, roughly 55% of F1's business came from premium large format theaters, including 23% from IMAX. That makes F1 only the third movie of the year to be a true IMAX event, following Sinners and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. All three saw more than 1/5 of their box office come from IMAX. And F1 holds on to its IMAX screens until Superman launches on July 10th. And according to exit polling, F1 lived up to its moniker as a dad movie. The audience was 62% male and 53% 35 years and older. Similar profile to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, only it did play a bit younger. Returning to the weekend chart, we see that Mithrigan 2.0 debuted in 5th place with just 8.7 million, or 1/3 of the first Megan's 27.7 million. This epic nosedive warrants a separate video, but suffice it to say that it's hard to slay when your sequel abandons the original genre and instead leans into camp. Mithrigan 2.0 even had a smaller opening than the Child's Play remake from 2019. And that's funny because the first Megan was sort of a remake of that remake. Meanwhile, How to Train Your Dragon dropped to 2nd, but it has now surpassed the final gross of How to Train Your Dragon 2, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. Some may be alarmed by its 46% drop-off in its 3rd weekend, but that decline was on par with the 2nd movie at the same point, and better than the 3rd movie. Any hope that Elio would suddenly sprout legs was dashed as Pixar's Whipping Boy tumbled 42% to 10.4 million in its 2nd weekend. That pales compared to Elemental, which was down only 32% in its 2nd weekend, doing 18.4 million, with a running tally of over 65 million, or 56% ahead of Elio at the same point. In 4th, 28 years later, Bled 60% in its 2nd weekend. Sure, word of mouth may be mixed, but ultimately this is a movie with niche appeal. Generally speaking, zombies have no legs. I'm reminded of Dawn of the Dead 2004, which was a well-liked zombie movie, yet still plummeted 60% in its 2nd weekend. Lilo and Stitch crossed the $400 million mark, while Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning surpassed the first Mission Impossible movie to become the fifth highest grossing entry in the franchise, not adjusted for ticket price inflation. Adjusted its seventh, only ahead of Dead Reckoning Part 1. Overall business for the weekend ending June 29th, 2025 was down 17% from the same weekend in 2024, when Inside Out 2 was still dominating, making this pretty much the slowest end of June weekend ever outside of 2020 and 2021. Now, let's wrap this up with the top grossing movies of the year so far. As of Thursday, July 3rd, Lilo and Stitch continued to gain ground on a Minecraft movie. How to Train Your Dragon surpassed Captain America: Brave New World to rank 4th. And F1 the movie is already number 11, about to bump Snow White out of the top 10. And for more updates, be sure to subscribe to Box Office Revival. This has been Brandon Gray, creator of Box Office Mojo. Thank you for watching.